Still very confused about how time.is works.
I'm confused about how time works.
Well, I mean, yes. Also that. But the website, what displays time, is confusing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea.
Like, are you seeing the same time that I am?
I don't know.
Are our time.is times in sync?
If our podcast is bad, can I blame it on lag?
Yes, of course you can. Hello, and welcome to Codex. It's a casual lore podcast. My name is Phil.
I'm Logan.
And today's episode is, I guess, a part 2 / follow-up to my solo ramblings last week on Flintlock. I finally rolled credits. I have thoughts. I have more opinions. And now that I have pulled you out of the doldrums of COVID, I would very much like to tell them to you, and hopefully you will enjoy it. But before we do that, let's get into some bright spots. What's a positive thing that's happened to you in the past 10 days?
Yep. Okay. We'll go with this. We are not sponsored, but I would be open to it. Fisherman's Friend cough drops is going to be my bright spot.
All right.
Those are some real function over form. I think I had you pick up a box when you were needing something a while ago, and they are aggressive and they do their job. I think what I'm looking for.
I would describe them as the cough drops equivalent of smelling salts.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, you can also just bury your nose in the little Ziploc bag of those, and that'll get you going too.
Oh my god! Just doing whippets off your cough drops.
Yeah, they're great. They're still cheap. I think they've had the same formula for like 70 years or something. They look like shoe leather. I feel like. Yeah. They shoe leather would probably taste better. Wouldn't work better though. So
they are truly awful and also effective.
Yeah. That's on brand for my stuff.
Hate and love them for it. They're awful. I hate them so much, but they do help me breathe when I am very sick, and for that, I guess I'm okay with it.
I exclusively love them. I think they're great. I hope they never change. I will die alone on this hill. Yeah,
I feel like calling them Fisherman's Friend is a very apt name for them, because they are very much like, I imagine the Gordon's Fisherman having a weird sewing kit tin of like 1920s era like sewing needles in them, and except it's these Fisherman Friend lozenges that he just made himself while he was waiting for the boat. He just rolled them all up and made these weird little things that make you smell better, because holy cow, do they seem like they made them in 1923, and maybe the ones you're having now were actually still made in 1923.
Oh, yeah, just one big batch early. So this is unrelated, but this is my theory about candy corn, is that no one's produced candy corn for like 20, 30 years minimum. We're just recycling the same candy corn over and over again.
The Brock's company is just, we made 30 million candy corns.
You can leave that stuff
every year.
Exactly. You can just leave it out in a dish forever and nothing happens to them. So that's my dark theory.
I like that. The notion that there are fresh candy corns is just all of us lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Now you have to do it. Do the thing.
My bright spot is, since I got this computer up here, I've been spending more time up in my office, and for probably the past several months, I've been throwing a wool blanket over the door and a towel under the door jamb just to soundproof it a little bit, because my kid sleeps on the other side of this wall. And I finally got sick of it, and I bought some additional acoustic blankets and all of that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. But my bright spot is I have a shelving unit here, and I have to run a closet rod from the shelving unit all the way to the wall so that I can mount the blankets, and it's going to work like a cool curtain dealy. But my bright spot is that after spending 5-6 years now learning how to do CAD design and all that bullshit, I just 3D printed the specific closet rod mount I need so that it will tie directly into the shelving unit instead of having to do what I usually do and jerry rig a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
So I used 6 years of furniture design CAD technology to make a little widget that's 60 millimeters in diameter so that I can put a closet rod on my shelving unit.
That's exciting stuff. Is this your first like fully functional print?
Well, I have to I don't have a 3D printer, unfortunately. So I have to send away for it. So it'll be arriving next week. This is technically the first print I've used in the house. I used it for that pen project I worked on. So I have several fully functional pen clicking mechanisms that I 3D printed, but this is the first thing I will actually use more than looking at it for 10 seconds and saying, fuck, that doesn't work. Some progress.
Yeah.
All right. So, but before we started this episode, you did some homework and you listened to the rantings and ravings of a guy who was trying to figure out what to do while you were gone.
I did. I listened to it twice.
Oh,
I know.
That's more than I did.
The second time was at 1.5 times though. So
truly twisted behavior.
Yeah. Count that however you wish.
Okay.
Look, I don't have the ADHD wins sometimes. So I had questions after listening to it the first time. And then a couple hours later, I was like, man, I don't remember a single one of those questions.
So you listened to it again to remember your questions?
Yes. That's why I put it at 1.5. I was like, I'll hear the bullet point that triggered the question in my brain, but I couldn't remember any of those either. So I was like, okay, I'll just zip through this thing like an undergrad lecture on PowerPoint that I'm totally pretending to watch and jot down my stuff real quick here. That's
okay.
Pretty good.
Nice. So I think let's hit those questions first, and then I did some additional reading. I rolled credits on the game late last night, so I finally completed it, but I can't say that has improved my knowledge of what is actually going on in the world itself. But let's answer some of those questions or see if I can, and then okay. I can weave in some details from some further research I did.
Perfect. Question 1. Capes? Are there capes?
Good question. So no, not in a Helldivers RuneScape kind of way.
I'm a sucker for a good cape.
So there's not capes, but there is, you can equip helmets, pauldrons, and gauntlets. So, and it's actually only one pauldron and one gauntlet. So you get some cool shoulder bling going on. And then if you further into the game, it unlocks more and more outfits. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 different versions, and then they come in different colors. And the higher tier ones have those the funny Napoleonic shoulder capes where it's just here's this little shoulder guy that I guess is a fabric pauldron if you think about it. So kind of a cape.
It hints in the direction of capehood.
Yeah. I think honestly the physics of animating a Helldiver style cape was probably a bit much.
Yeah. Well, that leaves them room to grow.
Exactly. Hopefully in the second game there will be capes.
Because this universe sounds like it should have capes.
It really does. Or at least like shawls that are cloak-like.
Cowls.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean this as a compliment. But it did not take too long into that episode before I was like, this is the most peak hipster trash I've heard in a long time. And I feel like that game was made directly at you.
Yes, it was. 100%. It was made like it was laser focused directly on me of like, yes, Napoleonic fashion and fun world building. Of course, this is exactly what I want.
Question 2. You mentioned the black powder being kind of like an evil force in universe.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like the labor practices behind producing the black powder, definitely not good. But like, I guess what else gives it an evil characteristic? And is it evil, or is it like, I was getting like Promethean kind of vibes?
A little
like
bit.
If this is the thing that exalts man to rival godhood, then is it? Yeah, where are we going there? Riff on that.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So I think the angle I was taking on it was like evil, as in like a way to. I knew this was going to be trouble.
A bloody statist? Is that where we're? Because I got like, there's definitely some like the coffee houses are definitely a nod towards French salons, I assume, or even like the early English. What were those called? Penny universities. Was that the name?
Yes, that sounds right.
So yeah, I'm getting a lot of like revolutionary vibes out of this.
It is a little bit. So the coffee houses are...
That's the word I couldn't find. Sorry.
Yeah,
getting a lot of enlightenment vibes out of this.
Yeah, so it's a combination of enlightenment, and there's even more... Like there's a little bit of black powder being the catalyst for like a massive amount of industrialization in this world. So there's like further stuff in there that I guess the main influences they were pulling from was like Mesopotamian mythology, which I think kind of comes through with their gods' designs, and then the world itself has been in a very medieval focus, like with the Three Peaks area, and even in the desert zone that's called the Wandering Rest. It is very like still that's much more like Egyptian and Mesopotamian, like Sumerian seeming. And the introduction of the black powder is very much this push of like, oh yes, we've discovered this like great powerful source that is like able to elevate us and kind of turn into a new way to wage war, and is starting to unify people around, you know, these great inventions that they're making. I think the evil point that I was trying to make, and I think the game doesn't necessarily put this lens on it. I think I was taking it a little bit based on like you use it as a means to kill divinity, and whether that I think is morally an evil or a good is perhaps left more up to the player than the game has an opinion on it. But it does treat it as like you don't see black powder used in a industrialized positive way. It is always a form of destruction.
Okay. So kind of like I definitely got some like Lord of the Rings parallels. The whole Saruman industrialization arc sort of vibe of like a nature versus industrial sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's a single battle that you do in like the desert area, which I absolutely failed. But it was a battle with one of the knights. Like they had gone on a great expedition there, and I can't remember what they were doing, like trying to find a relic or something.
As knights are wont to do,
as one is wont to do. But you go there and you meet the commander, and the commander is you tell him to get the hell out of there because they don't belong there and they're harassing the people around there. And you say, hey, get out of here. and he says, "Okay, that's cool. Let's do it old style. Let's do a trial by combat. But you don't get to use any of your fancy black powder stuff. You have to just meet me on the field of battle with your axe and go toe to toe with this great big knight to get them to go. Otherwise, you break the terms of the duel, and then you have to kill literally everyone." But it's like juxtaposing it as like, this is not a thing of honor. Like what you have here, like these explosions and this gun and everything, like this is not how it is done. Like this is not an orderly and,
Yeah, you should be using a lightsaber, not a blaster.
Exactly.
You uncultured swine.
Yes, this is not a civilized weapon.
Yeah. Question the next. This is kind of a two-parter.
Okay.
Do we know where gods come from? And you mentioned that they don't have like colloquial names that are agreed upon. They're just the god of death or the god of X. Who is determining and propagating that label? Okay.
So this is kind of the big thing here that I ended up finding. I found an interview that the lead narrative writer on the game did. I think they did it with Game Rant. And there's a lot of discussion about the gods in general. So the first thing is, and I think the thing that is like so interesting about the gods in this game specifically is that they are pulling from like the Mesopotamian mythology and like their treatment of the gods versus something like what we normally see with like the Greek gods and the Norse gods, which are different from one another, but generally the they live up on Olympus, they live in their different realm, and they look down upon us. The
literary structure is the same.
Ish.
Same vibes.
Yeah. So the Mesopotamian gods in the way that they're using them here is that they reside in a different place, just like the other pantheons typically do. But they reside in the place called the Great Below, which is what the game refers to it. It's through this doorway in this giant mountain behind the City of Dawn, which is where the game starts. So they all live in, I guess, the underworld. Like they live in hell. Like that is where they reside. Where they come from, beyond that is not clear. Like there is no like creation myth in the game itself about like where the gods came from. They do mention that the guardian of the door, the final boss, his name is Uru, the Great Ravager, which is a very good name.
It's a good name. Sounds like a good like Magic the Gathering commander. Like
he looks like a he looks like a Magic the Gathering commander. He is listed as like your companion, the god of death, refers to him as the first god. So there is like an original god, and then the other ones came maybe not from him, but arose around
after
him or something
at
like
least.
that. Yeah. So the Great Below is where they reside, and then the whole like crux of the game, I guess, is that the doorway between the Great Below and the Above is in peril and is perhaps opened, and then the gods are able to pour from the Great Below into the Above. And like that's kind of the thing that you're fighting, is that they've now like come out and they've taken over dominion of their different areas. And then
is that bad? Is that a bad thing? Do we not want?
Oh
that?
Yeah. That's real bad.
Okay.
I think the thing that is like alluded to at least is that the different gods there's five. There's five main gods that are in the game at least. There's Uru, the Great Ravager. He is the guardian of the door and the first god. He is basically the, I guess, like Cerberus in some form. Mm-hmm. Like he guards the door, makes sure no one gets in and no one gets out. The next one is Anshi or Enki. He's your little fennec fox friend that is like gives you magical powers as you go through the game. He is the god of death, and his whole deal is I don't really know what his whole deal is. It's becoming harder and harder to determine what the differences are between a couple of these, but it seems like his whole thing is that he like takes the dead from the door and brings them to their resting place, hears their stories, and then kind of like takes their knowledge in. The next one is, oh, what's that?
That's interesting. So like a Karen, but more.
Yeah. You find there's like a whole small little mini game in there called Sebo, and you can pick up special coins as you play through the game. And one of them says the death god's obol, and it has like some funny flavor text about how humans always think that he needs some sort of tip for taking their souls, which is good.
Good nod.
Yeah. And the reason it's kind of confusing about the god of death and what that really means is because the second main boss that you fight, his name is Dukmar, and he is listed, at least in the in that interview, they call him the self-proclaimed god of knowledge, which I think has a couple of very interesting additions there. Like the idea that he is self-proclaimed as the god of knowledge means that maybe he isn't the god of knowledge, and also makes me kind of question what
is a god at this point?
Yeah, and like what the like you look at something like the Greek pantheon, let's say, and like each one of those gods is assigned a thing that they are the god of. You know, like Athena is the goddess of knowledge, right? Or goddess of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've all got their little specific playpen to tool around in.
Yeah, but they're like maybe there is from my high school level of reading whatever that one book we all read about the Greek pantheon. I don't remember there being an origin story for Athena discovering that actually she really likes wisdom and that's what she's going to do.
Didn't she get cracked out of the head of Zeus?
Yes. Yeah.
I just assume it's like the head portion, like came from a dude's head, therefore brain stuff.
Yeah, but there's something interesting about like this Dukmar god being a self-proclaimed god of knowledge, where like, are they just beings that live in a different place and they decide that they want to do something? And like, that is what they have decided to do. Like they have decided he will be the god of knowledge because, you know, he listens to all of the stories of the dead that pass through. And this, he believes, has given him knowledge of the above world. So now he is smarter because he has gained all of this knowledge from all of these dead souls that have worked their way through the great below. But he wasn't ordained to be the god of knowledge, right? Like he just decided that. So was he something else previously, or was he just Dukmar, god, just like all of them, and they just decided what they wanted to be at some point?
Okay, so if I'm following, you're wondering, is this like an inherent immutable quality of either the god or the universe to some degree, or is this a job or a role that they take on?
Yeah, because that same interview refers to the way that he appears as like he's like a 12-foot tall suit of armor, like very angular and looks like a stereotypical knight in shining armor. Like he's got a big sword and he's he looks like that. And his appearance is based on all of the stories that he's learned. So even the gods are, this revolution in gunpowder has probably happened in less than 50 years, it seems like. So even the gods are slow to pick up the new way of things. So he appears as this knight in shining armor because that is the stories that he has been told as the people, pass through the great below. So he shapes his visual appearance based on what he has learned to, appear in the human realm. So like even their appearance is not immutable. Like they are able to perhaps change what they want to be the god of or what they want to focus on. And maybe they're just more powerful beings, and that's kind of it.
This is only tangentially related, but I do kind of like the idea of a universe where, like, the god of the forge is just trash at making things out of metal, but is like a really good farmer and would love to be the god of the harvest, but unfortunately he's the god of the forge, and damn it, he's got to go to work and be kind of shitty at it.
Yep.
There's a webcomic
there already
in there
was
somewhere.
one of those.
Yeah.
He was, he was the third born son, and unfortunately the previous two took the good jobs.
Yep. Could totally excel in a different field, but has been assigned something else instead.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm trying to remember what the second part of your question was. Did I answer that?
Yeah. I think we covered most of that. The only other like real lore question I had was, what is the status of like literacy and the printed word in this universe?
So I would say probably on par with what we would expect from like Napoleonic times. Like it's all written language. There's like epitaphs and buildings and stuff, and it doesn't seem like there are different. I mean, it's all, who knows, but it doesn't seem like there are different languages to a greater degree. It seems like, or if there are, as the player character, you're able to read all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
But you'll come across a lot of the stuff that I grabbed for that last episode, and even some of this that I pulled from are actual accounts, like part 1, part 2, part 3 accounts of the judges, or like prayers to Ramaha or things like that. There are written accounts, and you'll come across like plenty of books and stuff around.
Okay, that tracks. I think that's all I had for episode 1.5.
Okay. So there's a couple of other things that I just want to almost tickle you with, because I feel like you'll find this interesting. So another like level to the religion and everything in this game is that I think I touched on this on the last episode, but generally the people of this world don't know these gods. They are ancient, and as industrialization has happened, they have basically forgotten them. So you'll see when you fight the first god, Ramuha. She is the tusked goddess and the goddess of order, and she appears as a three-armed like suit of armor, animated suit. And she has tusks on her helmet all the way around. And it's interesting because she takes over the Three Peaks area, that city of Rit, with all of the like classical medieval dudes. But in ancient times, it's possible, at least, that the descendants of those people, of the knights that came from some great land, may have actually believed in Ramuha, just based on a bunch of the symbolism around the keep, their like reliance on great elephant beasts that perhaps could have been boons from the gods, and then all of their judges, their 3 judges, which I did find out they have names or focuses, I guess. The important government that decides all of the things to do with the Three Peaks area are the judges of mercy, duty, and honor, which it seems like no basis for a government.
Yeah. What is a judge of duty? The other 2, I feel like I can at least kind of headcanon my way through.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And all 3 of them sit in the grand castle, and one of them is above the others, so I'm not sure which one is which, but I guess like duty to your community or to your unit, maybe, which I guess
like
could also
just
be
lump
mercy.
that under. Yeah.
It's unclear. But I was trying to unwrap some of this because I feel like the motifs of the game throughout, like you see a lot of elephants, you see very similar like armor shapes and fighting styles and stuff in those knights. And it's possible that Ramuha had either influenced them or they had believed in Ramuha for, some point in ancient history. And then as they lost their beasts in their conquest, and as they discovered black powder, a lot of this stuff started going away, and they lost their faith not to be supplanted by another one. And then just, she came back. Which is kind of like aided by Anshi, the god of death, because when you go to the other zone, the Wandering Rest, there's like tons of Anubis style, like jackal statues everywhere. Like this town is like clearly aware of this god, or had been previously, but now the people have yet again just completely forgot and moved on.
Interesting. This Anshi fellow seems to have some trickster Loki vibes.
Yeah. The big thing the big thing with him is that would it be surprising to you if I told you that your companion that saves you in the beginning of the game and gives you great powers maybe has a bit of a dark side?
Yeah.
He's a good-hearted dude, which again, like back to the self-proclaimed god of knowledge thing, like the more I started thinking about Enki's place as the god of death throughout this game is like assigning the god of moniker to a lot of these beings. It's messy. Like the god of death in this game, like, yes, he provides you with, he will attack other creatures for you and give them curses. And he has like the special ability is called a withering. So like there's a lot of like death motifs in there, but I think the more I went through it, the more it became like, well, let's get metaphysical here. Like death is just a step, right? Like it is really, he's a god of change. Like he is a great force for moving from one phase to another. And it starts to feel kind of weird how much we rely on names for some of these in that kind of way. And I wonder if that has something to do with why these religions went away. Like the names get muddy. Like he goes by two different names anyways. The worship gets weird because as industrialization happens, like maybe greater communities don't find the great bond in worshiping some of these gods as they had previously. Like knowledge changes our understanding of religion in some ways, and then ultimately, the label gets weird and we kind of drop it over time.
Do you want some headcanon for this game I've never played?
Sure, go for it.
So the actual gods that seem to have fallen out of favor a great time ago were gods and did leave or perish or whatever. And you are now just interacting with shapeshifters who are assuming the form of gods based on the relics and architecture that they find still existing.
I like that. There's like, let's be real. There's no evidence that that's what's happening. However, there is also kind of a possibility of some variety. Like,
yeah, see, I'm just like reversing the causality on like the elephant architecture and symbolism, and it's not that they're aligned with this god now. It's that this god in quotes is aligning themselves with the iconography that already exists.
Yeah, and I think for a couple of them, you can kind of see that. I think so. One of the things, I went back and loaded it up earlier today just to read through some more of the very scant amount of pickups that have information on them for you to read. This is very much a read the flavor text and maybe you'll get some background information kind of games. But I had missed a complete, like, the last side quest, and it seems like it was maybe the most important big one that wasn't just here's a fun fetch quest. But one of the characters I referred to in the last episode, I think his name is Luca, and he's the one who has the mark of the old magic on him. So you find his sister, Johara, I think her name is, and she's like, hey, I think my parents did something real fucked up a long time ago. Let's go to my old house that I blew up because I needed to end their weird rituals, and like, let's go see if we can solve this like actual curse that is on my brother.
That's
so you go there.
That's not a good pitch for like an afternoon. That sounds like it's going to go bad.
I mean, it was either that or defeat the first god, so I took a detour.
Yeah. Okay, I guess it sounds better now.
Yeah, either the god of all gods, or, you know, let's go check out this cult real quick.
Yeah.
So as you go through the game, you pick up notes every once in a while, and there are notes that are sent to cult members, and they're assigned magus. And I don't know, it doesn't, the game does not very well signal that like these are cult members. Like, there is some mention that some of the people you're fighting are cult members, but it's, you know, there are no tags above someone's head that says Cultist 1 or anything. Yeah. But you go to this house, this like huge manor house of these people, and you find from like notes that you pick up and from Johara kind of talking about the situation of living there that, number one, alchemy exists. Like, alchemy is a thing that is going on in this world to some degree. And there are also rituals that are happening. So you go there, and there is like some way for humans to interact with the old magic. And you'll pick up a couple of pieces of armor that are like, they're called like the Warlock set. And there's mention of like a book of sorcery. So you go through this, and then you kill a bunch of dudes, and then you go down to the bottom, you find the arcane focus you need to destroy the ritual, and then you come up and you fight the boss of the area. The boss is called Mother Father because the ritual went wrong, and it smashed Mother and Father together into one single being, and they're slowly sucking the life force out of their son Luca.
A full Tuvix situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So sucking them together, and then you have to fight him, and you defeat him, and all of that stuff. But
you just like kill this person's parents right next to him?
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of knocked out. Also, they're an abomination. She hated them. Bad stuff happened. Sucking the life force out of her brother. But yes, you did.
Okay. Just clarifying.
She technically thought she had killed them like 10 years ago. So, you know, you're just finishing the job, I guess.
Okay. So yeah, you're not even really involved.
Yeah. Yeah. But so that person, they refer to themselves as the Magus. So like, they are the cult leader, that they were able to somehow transcend life, and now they are immortal, just sucking the life force out of their son. But, and this is kind of the thing that I wanted to bring up. They are specifically pulling the life force from his soul.
Oh.
So souls are in this game, like, they are real, and they are sources that can be used for energy in some regard. And then there's even mention that that warlocks and sorcerers, like, they use up that energy as like some sort of like magical focus. And when they die, they aren't, like, their souls are not taken to the great below. They're not even worth like burial rites or like last rites at all. They're just, their body is a poisonous thing, and it will just like turn to dust when they die. And it all comes back to like, the soul is real, and that they travel through the door to the great below, which is this barrier between the living and dead. And those souls are listened to by Anshi, and they're listened to by Dukmar. And then they live off the rest of their days, basically in a shadow version of the above world.
Huh. That kind of implies like that the soul is quantifiable too. If it can be drained over time, then you can subdivide the soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I don't like, this is figure of speech very much when it happens, but multiple times you'll like interact with things of like great power or like great withering strength. And your character will mention that like she's feeling a tug on her soul, which is, you know, the figure of speech, but also feels like a weird thing to say. Like, you know, you are feeling a thing that is not manifest.
Do they tell you where in the body the soul is located?
Unfortunately, they do not. So it could be the head or it could be the heart. It's completely unknown.
And I feel like you've already greatly limited it. Why not the left pinky toe? Or
that's true.
Or the right butt cheek. That's where I would maybe keep it.
Just for safekeeping.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna be looking at your head and your chest. That's where they're gonna be digging for it. So, gotta squirrel
is that
away
like
somewhere
an
else.
Evolutionary trait?
Mm-hmm.
Like over time, it has migrated such that the gods below can't find it.
Right. Yeah. You got the false soul up in the head or in the chest, and then you keep the real one. Like if you're going to a place and you're worried about like getting mugged or a pickpocket or something, you got the decoy wallet. Same idea.
I gotcha. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I'm
going to rewrite this game.
Yeah.
I've got headcanon all over for this thing.
A headcanon for a game I haven't played is a new segment.
I could do that every week. Yeah, that's fine.
Let me see if there's anything else in here. I think along the same lines as the soul being something that is manifest in the game and is like clearly being gestured at as being like a real thing that people either believe in or have some way for you to feel. The door, like the specific door between the above world and the great below, is like a doorway. Like it is a real thing. And it is a true gateway, and it is guarded by this ancient being. And hilariously, the seal on the door is just to stop gods from getting out and also humans getting in. But I guess like in the past 10 years, there wasn't like they put a doorway up, but it didn't stop dead souls from coming up, which is the whole point of the problem of the game. That they didn't lock it specifically for dead people, which is, I guess, like a fun technicality.
Seems like a pretty severe oversight on project management for that one.
Yep. Yeah.
Is this exclusively is this a physical door or like an intradimensional door?
It is an intradimensional door, I guess. Okay. It looks like a giant swirling purple portal.
That's a good portal. Purple's a good color for portals.
And it's like triangular, which is also pretty cool. But it has infrastructure around it. So it's the whole problem, the whole inciting incident of the game is that something happens that allows the dead to emerge from the great below and flood into the city of Dawn. So in Dawn, I get spoilers. You go back to Dawn at the end of the game. The whole end of the game is going back through the trenches that you fought through in the first level, and then you leave Dawn and you go to Old Dawn, which is a part of the city that has been closed off except for priests for the most part. So once again, coming back to this, priests exist in the game like up to 10 years ago. There are not gods that are known that those priests like pray to or like minister service of. It seems like the priests solely exist to maintain the gate or watch over the gate that is the portal between the above and the below.
Okay. From where do priests draw their ranks? Are those just rando people that is there like a job posting somewhere? Do you got to submit your CV to tend the interdimensional gateway?
I have no idea. It's also weird because, you know, it's the kind of the mesh of cinematic game design versus like trying to put together what is actually happening here, because you go to the gateway, and the gateway is this giant portal, and on both sides of it's a giant causeway that leads out to this giant portal. And once you get to the causeway, you just pan the camera around, and there's just houses there. Like you can just see stuff like there is some prime real estate looking at this cool portal.
What do you think the property values are around the portal? Is that like living near like a scenic view of some kind that's going to help, or do you think that's like living next door to an airport?
I mean, I feel like that property value plummeted about 10 years ago. I think is perhaps the
okay. Yeah, so it was probably a boon before all of the zombs show up. And then
and then it goes real bad.
That there goes the whole neighborhood.
Yeah. So I am dropping some images in the chat for you.
Okay.
You can see, like, it is a big ass gateway. Like, it is huge. And you have your big boss battle up at the top there. Uh-huh. But again, like, this gateway is real, and that barrier is known, and there are signs around around that area once you go into the old town that tells you that, like, stay away from this portal unless the dead see you, because that's obviously bad news. So it's a weird thing where, like, the portal is real and, like, people know it and that is manifest. So that there is, like, I think the thing, maybe the biggest takeaway from this game is that I find it very interesting how incongruous the idea of the afterlife and, like, the gateway to the afterlife being a true and real thing, and combining that with the complete lack of religion around the gods that are also very real, but they seem to have been forgotten. But the gateway to the dead and the realm of gods is real and is known and is tended still. And I find that fascinating, that, like, the world can have this very clear split between these two things, and it doesn't feel weird. Like, no one is like, wow, I can't believe I didn't know the gods existed. It's just like, well, that's just how the world is. Like, that's just how we've been living, and that's what our expectations are.
Yeah, I think that maybe tracks more than we're comfortable with at first blush, because you could get a lot of people in the room who would very vehemently say that they have evidence for their god currently. I'm not sure if this is super different, other than the physical tangible thing, but we don't also really know what that physical tangible thing is.
Yeah.
If you're just a guy. The other thing I'm noticing here, looking at the portal, is the blocks surrounding it are very large and shaped very well. And the building technology required to do that seems much higher than the structures we're seeing at the foot of the area here. Although, like, Minas Tirith looking buildings around it. Yeah.
Yeah, in that, the third image I sent that has the plume of smoke there, you can see the gateway in the distance there, and it is in this also very surreal looking Susian mountain, I think is how I would refer to it. It is a giant smoking mountain that is just almost completely vertical.
Yeah, it declares its own importance just by existing.
And it's, I guess that is where you want to put your giant walled city, but it seems like maybe that's where all the evil stuff comes from. So maybe a bad idea.
Maybe the walls are to keep them in instead of keep others out. So yeah, I almost wonder if there's, like, some lost technology thing going on here also.
There might be. There's plenty of room for that to be the case. Like there's not a ton of signs of it in some degree, but almost the mention of alchemy and like sorcery, soul science, almost like it points at possibly a much more like focused study of things that are beyond the like current black powder level of industrialization. Like maybe there is like something more than that, but yeah, the game doesn't get at it very much.
Is black powder science or alchemy in the universe?
Good question. They don't really get into it, I don't think. It's not, I would say, just by how much it is used by like everyone in the like the coalition, like the fighting armies and everything, and it doesn't have the same stigma that the cult and all of the different pieces of armor have about sorcery and warlocks. I'd say that it's industrialization, but it doesn't seem like that one mention of get my alchemy ingredients is the only mention in the game of alchemy at all. So okay. I don't think it's seen that way, but it's I guess not an easy thing to know.
I guess to undermine my own question, if alchemy is true and repeatable, then it kind of just is science.
Yeah.
Huh. This game's kind of weird and it's got legs.
Yeah, it really does. And I think I mentioned this somewhere else when I was talking about the episode, but I still think like the coolest thing about this game is that it has built up enough of a cohesive vision of what this world is, and then it has just completely left all the blank spaces in there. Like it is like very clear what some of the things are. You visit 3 different places in the world, but it's not clear how those 3 places relate to one another. Like there is not like one massive world map. There are 3 area maps, and they do not connect. Like there is not like a clear way that, oh yes, if I look at this one, it, fits into this place properly. And like the same with all of the mythology stuff. Like they built a really interesting world that is underlined, bolded things, and then there's just empty paragraphs for like pages, and then it's just like, oh yeah, Uru the Ravager, he's the first god and the guardian of the door. And that's all we really learn. Like we learn about some like games between him and Anshi and like how that works, but ultimately like they mention some things, but the rest of it is just, these are fun bosses that we made, and the rest of it is just spaces for you to figure out. Like maybe the last way to kind of hammer this point home is that a lot of the information I brought together for this episode was pulled from that interview on Game Rant. Most of that is not in the text of the game. Like the important things about the host that I brought up last week, about the host being this like very weird looking, clearly not human creature that runs all of the coffee houses. They're like the nexus for rumors, and they're your shop, and they like tell you things about the area. There's nothing in the game that says this, but from that interview, the lead writer mentions that they are actually just dead. Like they are ancient, undead creatures that had come from the great below ages ago, from like some isolated incident a long time ago, and they all ultimately end up in the coffee house because they have, centuries of wisdom from being in the great below, and now they just coexist with humans in the above. And like that's just that's your shopkeeper. Like that's just a person who sits there and like sells you pants if you want for your reputation, and like that's it. But also they're like one of the coolest designs in like Pan's Labyrinth style weird looking design in this normal like pulling from different motifs kind of game, and that's just there, and like you're just left to think about that. Like, look at this guy. What's his deal? And then the game just doesn't tell you, and I think that's great. They just like left it wide open for you to speculate and, you know, have your own headcanon about how all of this stuff comes together.
I have plenty.
Yeah, you do.
You'd think just from like a health code standpoint, you wouldn't want the undead working your coffee shop, but
yeah. Well, okay. Well, we'll get off on this tangent and then we'll be done. But yeah. it's unclear. Like, so the host is not necessarily undead. Like, there is something about the dead that come through the gateway that are all like, they are shambling zombie corpses, and they like swing swords loosely, but they're not intelligent beings. They can't speak. They don't really do anything. They like generally do the same like 4 different things because there's, you know, 5 or 6 different enemies. But the hosts have something, whether it is the soul or what it is, but they have been around long enough to where they have either picked up language or they left the Great Below with language, and now they do this. Also, they just look completely different than, like, the undead that you fight in the game are humanoid undead and then kind of like weird abominations. But like this host, the image that I sent you,
yeah,
like that is
the nightmare that wants to steal my face. Is that
yes.
the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that one with the wooden mask of a face. That one is like, there's, what is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's at least 7 or 8 hands, like arms and hands on this creature. And it very much, like, the hosts resemble the god Anaya, which is we haven't really talked about Anaya because she's a boss and perhaps a love interest of Death, and it's complicated.
We got to leave room for a part 3. So.
Exactly. But she has a incredibly large, like, porcelain style face. She's the only god that has a face, I guess, technically, besides Uru. But so there's like this weird thing of like, oh, well, you know, these dead came from the Great Below a long time ago, and maybe they had some interaction with the goddess of life, who has given them some sort of new life that has allowed them to like live forever, and has given them, like, you know, the life in a vibrancy kind of way, instead of life as in the opposite of death, which I think is, again, like, that's just a weird blank space. Like, there's nothing in the game that would lead me to believe that is like true, but the game is also built in a way where that feels like it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you expecting a sequel to this? No. Maybe like a novel or an art book.
So this dev previously did Ashen, which is I guess like a smaller indie-ish game. This very much feels like a AAA, or this feels like an indie game or an indie studio tried to make a God of War style AAA game. And I think to some degree they did it, but just based on what I'm seeing, like, reviews wise and everything, less in the number of it and more in the number of them. I don't know how much traction this game got. Like, I really hope the way that the game ends, I feel like they're setting it up for, you know, this one's called Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn. I'm pretty sure if they made a sequel, it would be called The Flintlock, The Great Below, because you're there, like, mm-hmm. At the end of the game, you're in the Great Below. But I think just like the economics of game design at this point, like, I don't know if it's going to happen, and that bums me out. There is legs for certain, but I don't know if economically it makes sense.
I mean, they got Game Pass money this time around, didn't they? So
yes, yeah, that's how I played it. I played it on Game Pass.
Maybe there's a chance there.
Hopefully. It's also made by a pretty small team too. I was very surprised by how short the credits were.
That's interesting. It seems like there's, at a minimum, just a lot of art.
Yes.
That somebody generated, like, or a group of somebody's, like.
Yeah, there's a ton, and it's like really unique art. Like, that coffee house is like the density of stuff in that coffee house is like pretty representative of what you're dealing with. It's good stuff. I highly recommend you check it out.
What do you think your time to beat kind of thing are you looking at here?
I think time to beat officially says that it is 9 hours main path and like 13 or 14 doing like a more completionist. I was at 16, but I spent a lot of time in photo mode and I was editing the last show while I was doing it. So I probably spent like a good 45 minutes just paused.
Just had a pause screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a long weekend or two.
Yeah. Yeah. This came out less than a month ago and I got credits on it last night. If you made it this far and you think, yes, I will try this out. My two tips are stick with the normal difficulty. It gets much easier after the first 2 hours. And then second tip, at the final boss, there is a really bad bug that causes the game to crash after you defeat his phase 1.
Amazing.
The game will just lock and you will hear some of the cutscene behind it, but it's not exactly the same cutscene, and then you'll crash. The way that you fix this is that you get it down to almost no health, and then you dodge around for 10 seconds, try not to get hit, and then put the last hit in, and it gives the game enough time to figure out what's coming up next, and there you go. But you can't beat the last boss too fast.
Oof.
Which is just how our game's made.
Okay. So, was there just like a weird memory issue?
Yeah,
there?
I imagine. But yeah, take your Souls-like game where that monster can hit you real bad, and just kite him around for a couple seconds extra instead of getting that last hit in, just so it doesn't crash on you.
That is a little rough. Hopefully that receives a patch relatively quickly.
Yeah, it is the ultimate Souls experience, but losing all of your progress because you did too good. Just one last get you.
One, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, charming. All right.
Yeah.
Good to know. Going in.
Give that a shot. It's good stuff. The uniforms are all 10 out of 10. Loved all of them. Design in this game, fantastic. I really hope that there's more, and it has at least opened me up to a bit more of the Flintlock fantasy stylings of stuff. Like, this is an entire genre of works out there, and I think I will be dipping into some more Flintlock fantasy stuff to see what's up. Yeah, but that is at least the end of part 2. I will not promise there won't be a part 3, but that is end of part 2 of our discussion on Flintlock.
Yeah, maybe I'll just do part 3, still having not played this game.
Flintlock part 3 headcanon.
Yeah.
I would sit through an episode of your fanfic of a game you haven't played.
Just send me like 6 screenshots and see how long I can go.
Yeah, that'll be fun. A good improv exercise. Awesome. If you like the show, tell a friend or rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. GordonHamburger.com is where you can go to read all of the reviews. I think I will have a review of Flintlock pretty soon. I need to throw my hat in so more people get behind this game because I do want to see that sequel. You can also find links to our Twitch and YouTube out there. If you want to send a message or recommend another piece of world building for us to look into, visit the contact page on the site. Our music is done by our good friend, Nicholas Cahill. Links to his SoundCloud are in the show notes. I have been Phil.
I've been Logan.
And thank you so much for soldiering through your post-COVID experience to sit here and have me ramble at you about this game I really like.
Oh, always worth it.
Perfect. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week with another Codex entry. See you.